She had never been a good sleeper. Even as a child, she would wake up in the middle of the night with her heart racing, trying to understand why her dreams felt more real than her days. While other children forgot their nightmares by morning, she remembered every detail, the sounds, the faces, even the feeling of the air around her. Doctors once told her it was stress. Later, someone called it an overactive imagination. She stopped trying to explain it. Years later, she worked the night shift as a nurse in a government research facility far from any city. Officially, it was listed as a medical research center. Unofficially, it was something else entirely. The staff there didn't talk much about what was kept in the lower levels. They didn't have to. Everyone felt it. The being they were studying had arrived after a strange object crashed into a remote desert region. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't debris. It was alive. Tall, silent, and watchful. The scientists called her a queen because of her size and the strange markings on her skin. But no one really knew what she ruled. There was one confirmed ability that unsettled everyone. The queen could see dreams. At first they thought it was just a theory. A few guards reported vivid nightmares after long shifts near her containment wing. A technician claimed he saw flashes of his childhood while standing near the glass barrier. Most of the staff brushed it off as stress, until she was assigned there. On her first night in that lower corridor, something felt different. The air felt heavier, like before a storm. The queen stood motionless behind reinforced glass, her dark eyes fixed forward. When the nurse stepped closer, those eyes shifted. They locked onto her. Later that night, during her short break, she dozed off in the staff room chair. It was only for a few minutes. But in that time, she dreamed of standing in an endless field under a dark sky. She wasn't alone. Something tall stood across from her, and for the first time in her life, she felt like something inside her dream was watching back. The next morning, she felt different. Her dreams from the night before lingered in her mind like smoke. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something had seen her, not just looked, but understood. At breakfast in the staff cafeteria, she noticed the tension in the air near the containment wing. Scientists whispered quietly, glancing at screens and notes, but none spoke to her directly. That night, she returned to her shift, walking the familiar corridor that led to the queen's chamber. Her footsteps echoed on the cold floor. When she reached the glass, the queen's dark eyes were fixed on her again. This time, the nurse felt a strange pull. Almost like the queen was trying to reach through the barrier. She stood there for several minutes, unsure if she should step back or closer. Then, slowly, the queen tilted her head. A small, almost imperceptible movement, but enough to make the nurse's heart skip. It was like a signal, a recognition. Later, during a short break, she dozed off again in the staff room chair. But this time, her dreams were stronger. She was back in the field, but now the queen appeared in her vision. She was taller than the tallest building the nurse had ever seen, yet somehow calm. Her presence didn't frighten the nurse. It only made her aware that this being could feel and respond to what she felt inside her mind. When she woke, she felt shaken. She tried to tell herself it was just a dream, but her heart raced every time she remembered the queen's eyes. Something was happening that no one could explain. Security cameras recorded minor movements, and the staff noticed the queen shifting her gaze toward the nurse more often than anyone else. She wasn't just observing. She was reacting. The scientists began to take notes, puzzled. Their tests had always assumed the queen would react to external stimuli, not internal thoughts. Now they had to consider the impossible. The queen was seeing what the nurse imagined, what she feared, and perhaps even what she felt. By the end of the week, it was clear. The queen wasn't aggressive, but she was disturbed. Her usual calm posture had changed. She was unsettled whenever the nurse entered the wing. Some staff whispered that the nurse's dreams were too strong, too vivid, even for an alien mind to process. She didn't know why she, of all people, affected the queen. But deep inside, she felt a strange connection. One that neither she nor the scientists could fully understand. Over the next few nights, the dreams became stronger and more detailed. The nurse could feel the queen's presence in them. At first, it was just a shadow watching from a distance. But then it became a figure she could see clearly. It was the Queen herself, tall and imposing, yet somehow lonely. The nurse felt no fear, only a strange sense of understanding in the dream. She was standing in a vast field under a dark, cloudy sky. The wind whipped around her, but she felt calm. The Queen appeared, silent, watching her every move. For the first time, the nurse tried to reach out, not with hands, but with thought. She imagined showing the Queen what it felt like to be human, to struggle, to survive, and to care for others. She imagined her own fears, her own pain, but also her own courage. The Queen reacted. Slowly, the tall figure moved closer, mirroring the nurse's movements. Something inside the alien seemed to shift. It was as if she could feel the nurse's emotions, understand them in a way she had never experienced before. The Queen's eyes softened, her posture relaxed. The cold, empty stare was gone, replaced with something almost human recognition, maybe even empathy. When the nurse woke, she felt a deep connection that she couldn't explain. She wasn't afraid of the Queen anymore, and strangely, the Queen seemed less threatening in the waking world too. The scientists noticed the change. The Queen, who had been restless and withdrawn, now spent longer periods in calm states when the nurse was nearby. The equipment recorded shifts in her neural activity, something no one had predicted. The nurse wondered why her dreams had such power. She didn't have any special abilities, at least none she knew of. She was just human, with ordinary fears and ordinary courage. Yet somehow, her mind had reached the Queen. The Queen had seen herself reflected in those dreams. It was a silent understanding that neither needed words to explain. For the first time since capture, the alien Queen wasn't seen as a danger by the nurse. And for the first time, the Queen wasn't the only one observing. Both were learning about each other, about fear, about strength, and about what it truly meant to see another being clearly, not just through eyes, but through understanding. Weeks passed, and the connection between the nurse and the Queen deepened in ways that surprised everyone at the facility. The Queen, once restless and uneasy, now spent long hours observing the nurse quietly. Staff who had worked there for years noticed a change. She no longer paced or reacted to every sound. Instead, she seemed calm, almost reflective. The nurse, too, felt different. She no longer dreaded her night shifts near the containment chamber. Walking down the cold corridors, she felt a quiet confidence, as if something invisible linked her to the being behind the glass. She would glance at the Queen, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes seemed to communicate without words. During her short naps, the dreams continued. But now the Queen appeared less imposing and more approachable. In the dream, the nurse stood firm and unafraid. She did not try to fight or control the alien. She simply existed, showing the Queen her own courage and compassion. Slowly, the alien's presence softened. Movements became less rigid, expressions less blank. For the first time, the Queen seemed to recognize herself, not as a conqueror or a prisoner, but as something capable of understanding and choice. Researchers took notice. Equipment that had once recorded erratic signals now showed patterns of calm synchronization. Some scientists whispered about empathy, something they had never thought an alien could experience. Others were careful not to draw conclusions too quickly, but all agreed on one thing. The Queen was reacting in ways that were entirely unprecedented. The nurse didn't understand why her dreams had such an effect. She was just herself, just human. Yet the Queen seemed to respond to the simple truths of her experience: fear, hope, resilience. She didn't try to impress or teach. She simply existed and let the alien see her fully by the end of the week. It was clear that something had shifted in both of them. The Queen, once a figure of fear, was now calmer and more aware. The nurse, once cautious and unsure, felt a strange sense of trust. Neither needed words to communicate. Their bond was quiet but undeniable. It was as if each had shown the other a truth that could not be ignored: the power of understanding, the strength and vulnerability, and the deep, silent connection that can exist between two very different beings. One night, an alarm shattered the silence of the facility. A containment malfunction sent waves of panic through the lower levels. Scientists rushed to secure the queen, fearing the worst. The nurse ran toward the chamber, her heart pounding, unsure if she could help. When she reached the glass barrier, she saw the queen moving in ways she had never seen before. But it wasn't aggression. The queen's movements were precise, almost protective. Debris from the malfunction fell, and for a moment it seemed unstoppable. Then the queen stepped forward, creating a shield with her massive form. The nurse could see her intention clearly, to protect, not harm. Staff watched in disbelief. The queen, who had once terrified them, who had caused restless nights and nervous whispers, now acted out of care. The nurse felt a strange calm as she met the alien's eyes. No words were spoken, yet they communicated everything necessary. The bond they had formed in dreams had carried over into reality. Once the danger passed, the queen returned to her usual position, but something had changed. The containment wing no longer felt like a prison. It was a place of understanding, a silent acknowledgement that connection could exist even across impossible boundaries. The scientists documented everything. They spoke of empathy, trust, and the power of recognition. They could record the events, analyze the data, but they could not explain the quiet understanding between a human and a being from another world. It was something that could not be measured, only felt. The nurse, exhausted but calm, realized what had happened. Her dreams, her quiet courage, and her willingness to face the unknown had reached the queen in a way no one had expected. The queen, in turn, had learned something about herself that even a being so powerful could reflect, could feel, and could change. When she left the facility that night, she did not look back with fear or regret. Instead, she felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not because she had survived the night, but because she had shown another being, alien yet sentient, the value of understanding, patience, and the strength found in humanity. The event was never fully explained in official reports. To the world outside, it was just another experiment in a research facility. But those who had witnessed it knew the truth. The alien queen could see dreams. But it was the human's dreams, her courage, and her empathy that overwhelmed her and allowed her to finally see herself.